We've all heard the phrase, distance makes the heart grow fonder, definitely cheesy, but it's very relevant in my life, and I've been thinking about it more now that I'm kind of close to graduating next year. My dad is in the Navy, so we move a lot. My mom's Japanese, my dad's American, so I'm half Japanese, and I was born on a U.S. naval base in Japan. So don't ask me where I'm from, I don't really have a good answer for you. My first birthday was spent, after my first birthday, my dad spent 3 months at a time on and off the command ship called the Blue Ridge. So the first part of my life, I spent most of it with my grandparents and my mother in Yoda, Japan, which is a small town right outside of Tokyo. This meant that my early exposure to pop culture was mostly Japanese, and it was also for my grandparents. It was things like samurai mysteries. My first distance I experienced was going to American school on base in Japan. I should have been perfect, I should have fit in better than anyone. I was part of both cultures, I spoke both languages, and I looked like a little bit like both. But I was completely lost. The English I learned was from my mother, who is not a native speaker, so I was using weird phrases like, "May I use the powder room?" as a 5-year-old. This meant that I had to learn how to speak like a normal child. For me, I referenced things like Drake and Josh, Lizzie McGuire, the Powerpuff Girls, and I Googled slang I didn't know on my iPod when I got home. With this knowledge, I was ready to take on elementary school. Next, I moved to Alaska. This was my first time in the United States. Thanks to going to American school in Japan, there wasn't much of a culture shock, and I made friends right away. My parents planned to make this forever home after the Navy was done moving us around. A few addresses later, we came back. I thought this would be easy. I thought it would be going right where I left off. However, it was not. I didn't think people changed much from 3rd grade, but they do. My best friend Claire, who I met the first time I lived in Alaska, wasn't the same girl I knew from Girl Scouts. We had to get past the superficial things that keep you friends when you're little. When you're little. To catch up, we gave each other our yearbooks and gave each other My Life Until Now 101. A few hours later, you would not know any time had passed. Alaska is very important. I got to start and finish high school here. This is very rare and exciting for a military family. This was also my understanding of America. I understand Alaska is very far from the rest of the United States, but I didn't think of it as different. When tourists would come to my store and ask me if we took American money, I thought it was a joke. I didn't think there was much more to it. However, once I went to college, I realized that there's much more to America in the United States than Eagle River High School. I had been to Miami and South Carolina before this, but other than a few summers spent by the pool with my dad's side of my family as a little girl, I had no idea that the lower 48, as we call it, was much different than Alaska. Obviously, Georgia is very far, but I also didn't realize how different it was. I didn't grasp how distant someone can be from the rest of their own country. I met my best friend Jess right away, thank God. She picked up my phone one day when I broke it, and I decided to do nothing but cry because I had a really bad day. She took me to AT&T, and ever since then, we've been best friends. She was also determined to make me a dog because she thought it was hilarious how much I did not know. She taught me the basics, what a county was, how not everybody I knew was actually from Atlanta, and took me to buy tacos. She also taught me football, a life changer. She was my way of closing the distance between me and who were supposed to have already been my people. This is my last destination thus far. This TED Talk was inspired by Gigi, like I mentioned earlier, who was always distant in my life geographically, but was also the closest person to me. Gigi was my everything. He passed away last year around this time, and a few months before this, I was really missing my mom. On a whim, we decided to go to Japan for Thanksgiving and see Gigi, because she had a trip there a few days later anyways. Gigi asked us to go on a trip he had always wanted to go to his whole life, Kyoto, Japan. When we first brought up Japan, my dad said he was way too busy to come, but once he heard about Kyoto, he left us a voicemail saying, "I don't have phone service, but I'm on my way to Japan. Please pick me up at the train station." With that, our trip was born. He would deny it if you asked him, but we knew the Gigi dream ship was the game changer. Seeing them together was very odd. I had never seen them together as an adult, especially after not seeing either for a long time. They would go off on their own, share stories, laugh, all while not speaking the same language. I didn't understand it, but it was very interesting. Working on this TED Talk, I started thinking of distance, geographic, cultural, and between people. Research in long-distance relationships shows that a lack of ability to communicate makes it more meaningful and makes you more perceptive to the other person and the other person's communication. In language barriers, it shows that two parties forced to continue to work, like if you're married to her dad, that tend to make stronger relationships because you're forced to work past that frustration and understand each other in ways you wouldn't if communication was easy. When Gigi died, it hit my dad really hard. Everybody was expecting me to be upset, and I obviously was. But we didn't really understand how my dad could be so upset when he didn't actually understand Gigi. When I decided to make this my TED Talk topic, I asked him about it. He basically said all it was Gigi and him understood each other just because they had to, and they had to work together, and that he cared about him, and a lot of pointing at things. So, they were close because they had to use everything other than talking to understand each other. Japan grows distant in my life every day, especially without Gigi there pulling me back. But it also grows more special to me because of how much I have to work to keep it relevant to me. I have to watch shows, I have to speak Japanese on the regular, something I didn't used to have to do. Alaska, my America, the awkward teen years of my life, was the first place I had to learn to love. I had to work to love my new shows, my new friends, my new country, and the new part of me. This is also where I learned even strong relationships can suffer. Claire and I had to find ways to close the distance between us that time had created. Being here now, I love Alaska so much more, partially because I'm not in the cold and dark for half the year, mostly because I have to work to make it part of my life. This also extends to my parents. This also extends to my parents. The last 3 years that I've been very distant from them, I've also been closer to them than I've ever felt the 18 years before that I lived with them. The distance between me and the dogs was not just geographic, but also from the peers that I knew without actually knowing I was distant from them. UGA and also UGA football will always be special to me because this was the most distant I had ever been without even knowing. Jess and her mission to make me a dog through and through closed the distance between me and the lower 48, and it closed distance I would have felt if I had expected the rest of America to be just like Alaska. Gigi, the most impactful human in my life, was this person for my dad, even with every form of distance between them, just because they were committed to work on their relationship. My mom jokes that she knew the two were best friends when they had to build this cabin. They were stuck in the Alaska wilderness for 2 weeks, and they were somehow able to work on it, laughing and fighting the whole way, while not actually being able to talk. My message here is to not say that you should travel to the furthest possible place from your hometown and still be in the same country, like I did. You can be an hour away. Your distance can be going 30 minutes away from mom and dad. Whatever the distance is in your life, it's worth working for and worth the pain. Because distance does make the heart grow fonder, as long as you're willing to put in the work to close that distance.